There we go. So I will begin this evening's meeting. Organized. So welcome to the Thursday, September 8th, Nantucket Conservation Commission meeting. This meeting is being held entirely remotely via Zoom. I ask that everybody on the call keep your device muted unless you're speaking so that you're not picked up by the recording. If you wish to speak or comment, please raise your hand either in your camera window or virtually and wait to be recognized by the chair. If you have public comment, either by YouTube or on Zoom, please state your name and any relationship you have to the project. And I believe that's it. So we will begin tonight's meeting on items not, or excuse me, we will take public comment on items not being heard this evening. So at this point, if there's any public comment, now is the time. Does not appear that we have public comment at this point. And if I am correct, we do not have any continuances this evening. So we will begin under notices of intent. Brant Point Club LLC at 6 and 8 North Beach Street and 4 Dolphin Court. And this is represented by Brian Madden.
Madam Chair, that one is continued to 9/22.
Okay, so it looks like Brant Point Club LLC is continuing until our next meeting, September 22nd. So we will begin with Town of Nantucket, 98, 100, and 104 Washington Street. Jeff, are you taking this one or is Thais coming on?
Thais will not be on. Thais gave birth last week. We had just held this one open. We were waiting for the file number last time, but we had instructions for a positive order. And no one had any questions as it was just an invasive species management project.
Okay, perfect. So I just want to make sure there are not any questions on this application, either by commissioners or from the public. Let's see how many public we have on. If there are no comments, would somebody like to make a motion to close? Motion made by Linda. Is there a second? Seconded by Mike. So by roll vote, Beal.
Aye.
Engelborg.
Aye.
Arisman, aye. Golding.
Aye.
Mizzarelli.
Aye.
Plendowski.
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
All right, that carries unanimously. And that moves us on to 13 Commercial Street LLC at 13 Commercial Wharf. And I believe we have Chloe Coggins on for this one.
Yes. Can you guys see me? Okay. Yes. Hi guys. So I'm filling in for Paul Santos today. Chloe Coggins on behalf of the applicant. 13 Commercial Street LLC, located at 13 Commercial Wharf. At this point, you guys are probably quite familiar with it. So right now, where it stands, we are proposing to raise the existing dwelling, enclose the front porch area, expand the second floor, which is all within the footprint of the dwelling. But last meeting, the main cause of concern that we ran into was the north facing access, the stairs there. And I'm coming forward tonight with the same plan as the last meeting. I know that some of the concerns the commission had was that it's technically, structure within the 50, but realistically, to add on to the stairs that are already there, since this dwelling is being lifted so high that it's, whether we add on to the stairs that are at the enclosed porch or put it in the front here, it's still going to be structure within the 50, no matter, how we put it. At the end of the day, they are stairs. You know, we have agreed to get rid of the concrete pad at the bottom. So we're not adding, you know, this big impervious surface. They're stairs, they're access to the house. You know, we permit beach stairs all the time on coastal dunes. So I'm hoping, you know, within these last 2 weeks, maybe you guys have been able to have a change of heart, or see something differently. I'm not sure. So with that being said, I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Chloe. Linda, I see your hand up.
I have to reiterate what I said the last time. I don't see what the big thing is here, since the whole structure is inside the 50. Where they're adding the stairs is on the side where there's the cobblestones, the trucks, the cars, and everything else. And there's no other way to get into the structure. And I'm much more concentrating on the fact that they're picking it up and getting it out of the floodplain. And when you do that, whether it's down at Grand Point, and there's actually a zoning allowance for coming up and going over the 30 feet, because it's acknowledged that you have to come up so far that you're going to have to add steps into the setback, and you're going to be probably over 30 feet from grade. So I don't have an issue with this at all. If it was adding something on the water side, inside the 25, such as these steps, I'd have a little bit more of an issue.
Thank you, Linda. Any other questions or comments? Ian?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So I went out there earlier today, and there is on the west side of the lot, it's solid flagstones. Where they want to add the stairs, it's not cobblestones, it's actually grass with some flagstones set within the grass. My reservations have not abated, excuse me. English is my second language. And so I'd like to actually see the inside architecture of the house. And I'd like to see, you know, if it turns out that it really is unrealistic to put the stairs on the outside, then I would like to see, well, possibly all the flagstones pulled to the west as to ameliorate our decision. So I personally do not want to approve it the way it stands at this juncture. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. Mike, I see your hand up, and then Linda, I see yours as well.
Thank you. Actually, I don't have a problem with what's presented here. So I'm willing to go forward, but that's just my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Linda?
I didn't say where the stairs were going with cobblestones. I said it's on the commercial side of the structure, on the roadside side of the structure, which is cobblestone, and then dirt, and then shell. That's what I said. I didn't say that the stairs were coming down onto cobblestones. That would have been a little odd. But I appreciate the fact that they're getting rid of the concrete pad underneath them. Most of them over there don't have it. So I, again, do not understand how they're supposed to get into the house and other than airlift it or have some sort of a bridge. So I'm still in favor of it.
Thank you, Linda. Joe has his hand up, Ian, and then I'll go to you.
At the last meeting, I supported Linda's proposal, and I still do.
Okay, I'm not sure I remember Linda's proposal exactly, but you support the plan as it is?
Yes.
Okay. Ian?
So there are several hundred square feet of flagstones on the western side of the house. And so at the very least, if I'm convinced that in fact it's a major alteration to the building to put the stairs on the outside, I'm sorry, a major alteration to the building to just continue with the stairs inside, then I might be amenable should the flagstones be removed. But at the moment, I mean, the pad that we're talking about for the stairs compared to the flagstones, it's probably a 50th of the surface area of impermeable surface at this juncture. Thank you.
Thank you.
May I comment?
Yes, go ahead, Chloe.
So are you talking about the flagstones right now that lead from the driveway up to the current steps?
No, it's basically it's a solid stone patio, or call it what you will, along the western side of the house.
Along the western side of the
Yeah.
house. Okay, so not in the
Let me
area.
speak. If I did, I apologize.
No, that's okay. I'm just looking at this photo here, and I thought maybe you meant where the proposed parking is going to be moved.
No.
No, okay.
I know I mentioned this last time, although I am generally opposed to new structure within the 50, and I tend to hold that line. I do understand in this case the necessity to have stairs to a building that's getting raised in order to make it flood compliant. So, in this case, I would be willing to allow those stairs. Any other questions or comments from commissioners? Looks like no, so we'll see if there's any public comment on 13 Commercial Street. Does not appear that we have public comment at this point. Jeff, do we have everything we would need to close?
You have all of the required information, yes.
Okay. Do commissioners have any kind of final comments or questions?
Nope.
Okay. Chloe, would you like to close?
Yes, please.
Is there a motion to close?
Motion to close.
Motion made by Linda. Is there a second? Seconded by Joe. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Arisman, I, Golding,
No.
Mizzarelli,
Aye.
Plendowski,
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
So that carries with Commissioner Golding opposed. Thank you, Chloe.
Thank you guys so much.
And that moves us on to Murphy Foudlier. I get that one wrong every time. 9 Massachusetts Avenue, represented by David Haynes.
Good evening or afternoon. We continued this time because we were waiting for, this is the boardwalk across a salt marsh to a beach, is a portion of a property out in Smith's Point at 9 Mass Ave, excuse me. We were waiting for natural heritage comments, which we have received, but that in coupling with the DEP comments, I'm going to propose some things. The natural heritage came back and said it needs to be conditioned because it could be a potential taking. It's piping for habitat, and they would like to see conditions on there that would be the timing of the installation, and allow monitoring to continue out there, and a few other things. But we are amenable to that. With respect to the height and width of the boardwalk, DEP came out, and also Department of Marine Fisheries, who we did submit to, came out with the comments about the height of it versus the width of it. And the recent studies that have come out recommending a 1.5 height to one width. So for a 3-foot high boardwalk, that would be 48. I did the math last time. I can't remember what it is anymore. But it would be well above 4 feet, and that would require a railing. Railings are required 30 for anything above 30 inches by the Mass Building Code. Now, I know the commission has come down strongly on not wanting to see a railing on this and not wanting to see it raised. And my clients are of the same feeling. They don't want to see another high boardwalk out there with a railing. So we've come up with a compromise, we think, and that would be to raise the boardwalk to just under 30 inches for its length, and so it would be higher than the existing ones out there are about 24 inches or 2 feet. So this would be another half a foot above that. And also they are willing to narrow the boardwalk down to 2 feet. So that would be a ratio in excess of 1 to 1, 1 1/4 to 1 instead of 1 1/2 to 1. And also another factor that goes into this is that they have historically always just walked across the marsh and had a path across the marsh and laid down a couple of boards on the mosquito ditches that are out there. And so that is a current impact that is ongoing. They did come in the past and apply for more of a permanent aluminum bridge across mosquito ditches, but which they never built, and that has since expired. But they are continuing to walk across that. So there are existing impacts to that salt marsh that are occurring. By raising the boardwalk up higher, narrowing it down, we will get, and using a fiber crate. The studies that the state did were basically just cedar slats and with a gap between them. They did say that they did additional studies using more of a graded surface and they found better, slightly better, but not significantly better. And they still recommended the 1 1/2 to 1. So those are their guidelines. You don't want to see a railing. My clients don't want to see a railings. And I feel that this is a pretty good compromise. And I'd like to hear your thoughts on that.
Thank you, David. It looks like Mike has his hand up, and then Mark, I'll go to you.
Just a reminder, thank you, Madam Chair. Just a reminder that I was recused on this earlier application, and I should stay recused, having worked on this property in the past 12 months.
Thank you for that reminder. I may need it again later. Mark, and then Ian, I see you.
Yes, thank you, Ashley. David, tell me what's driving the height requirement of the boardwalk itself? I mean, can it be 1 foot, 2 foot, 3 foot? What controls the height?
Yeah. Do you mean in the study or in?
No, is there a town? I don't recall the town bylaw or the wetlands bylaw requires a specific height for a boardwalk. I mean, why couldn't it be 24 like the neighbors are?
Well, the DEP came in their comments, and also the comments from Marine Fisheries came in and recommended 1 1/2 to a ratio of 1 1/2 to 1 to allow enough sunlight to get underneath the boardwalk for plants to grow and maintain the biomass. They're saying that there's a reduction in the biomass for the lower, wider ones. And there is some, you can see it on the neighboring one. There is a little bit less vegetation under that, but we're talking going higher and getting more sunlight in and narrowing the boardwalk. But in terms of the 30 inch, That's the state building code that triggers the need for a railing on both sides. And I know how you feel about the railings. We'd prefer to leave it right where it is, the width that it is, just like the neighbors, but we're trying to compromise and come to a good solution.
All right, Ian, you had your hand up, and then Seth, I'll go to you.
I did, Madam Chair. And David, from my perspective, please thank your clients for threading the needle and presenting this plan without the railings. And from my perspective, I really appreciate them taking this approach. So thank you.
I will pass that along. Thank you.
Seth, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also appreciate the smaller profile boardwalk, but I'm a little bit confused. So David, is this correct? The ratio is that the height of the boardwalk has to be 1.5 times the width of the boardwalk?
That's correct. Those are the guidelines, the recommended guidelines.
So if you're talking about a 2-foot boardwalk, 24 inches, then now you have a 36-inch
Correct.
height. So isn't that still going to be over the building code?
Well, we're not talking about, we're talking about going slightly less. We're going less than 30, so we don't have to put the railing on, which does not meet the 1.5 to 1. It's 1.25 to 1. So it doesn't quite meet the DEP guidelines. They're guidelines. They're not, there's no rule, there's no hard and fast rules in the regulations, but that's the guidelines that their recommendation is 1.5 to 1. But considering that they're already walking there and there's a path there that's created by them walking on it, that's more impact. That's impact that we're not going to be having in the future.
Thank you. I understand. I was just trying to make sure that, we can't permit something that is obviously not permissible under DEP or any other permitting scheme. So if it's just if it's just a guideline, it's just a guideline.
That's the way I read it. I read it in their letter.
Any other questions or comments from commissioners? And I know I appreciate as well, David, your client's willingness to keep a lower profile. It's very nice. So if there's no commissioners' comments or questions, we'll open it up for public comment. It does not look like we have any public comment at this point. Jeff, do we have everything we would need to close this one?
You do.
David, would you like to close?
Yes, please.
Ian, were you making that motion?
I was, and I believe Mark was seconding it.
Yes, I saw that. So give Ian the motion and Mark the second. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Arisman, I, Golding,
Aye.
Landowski,
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
So that carries with Commissioner Mazzarelli recused. Thank you, David.
Thank you, and I'll see you later.
So that moves us on to Stark Point LLC at 16 Easton Street. And I believe we have Chloe Coggins on for this one.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Okay, so Chloe Coggins here for Stark Point LLC, located at 16 Easton Street. This was also heard at the last meeting. So just an overview again, we are applying here for the proposed demolition of 2 existing dwellings and construction of a new dwelling, garage, studio, and a gym. And last meeting, the issue that we had, or the issue that the commission was struggling here with, was the subsurface waterproof vault. So we revised the plan a bit. We reduced the size of the vault. It was originally 392 square feet, and we reduced that to 274. So, I mean, that's a reduction of 118 square feet. Also, just a little bit of a clarification on the engineered flood vents. We've added 2 more on each side of the subsurface vault, so that's a total of 4 directly next to the vault. And we're putting them there with the idea that it's in the path of the floodwater flow, obviously from Nantucket Harbor towards Easton Street. And then also that's 25 engineered flood vents that have been added throughout the building foundation, where only 18 are actually needed. So we're hoping that with all of the extra flood vents throughout the whole foundation, that should be enough to have this subsurface waterproof vault and also the reduced size. And yeah, with that, I'll take any questions or comments.
Thank you, Chloe. Any questions or comments from commissioners? Like, no at this point, so we'll open this up for public comment. Does not appear that we have any public comment. Jeff, do we have everything we would need to close?
Yes, you have all the required information.
All right. Chloe, would you like to close?
Yes, please.
Is there a motion to close?
So moved, Madam Chair.
Motion made by Linda. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mike. So by roll vote, Beal, Engelborg,
Aye.
Arisman, I, Golding,
Aye.
Mizzarelli,
Aye.
Landowski,
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
All right, that carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chloe. And that moves us on to Stephen L. Cohen, trustee at 6 and 11 East Hallowell Lane, represented by Mark Ritz.
Good evening, Mark Ritz from Site Design, representing the applicants at 6 and 11 East Hallowell. The project before you is the request to do some repair to an existing timber groin. Repairs consist of replacing some piles which are starting to rot, as well as replacing some boards which are starting to rot, especially sort of the upper portions of the structure that are subject to wetting and drying cycles. At the last meeting, there were a couple of questions and concerns, and I'll address those in a moment. I'd just like to sort of summarize bits of this project quickly once again. The structure on this site has been present on the site since 1967. We feel that makes it a grandfathered pre-existing structure or use. We're requesting relatively minor repair of that structure. That portions of the structure are rotting, but it is overall intact. At the last meeting, Commissioner Golding requested a date be placed on the high tide, mean high water line, excuse me. And instead of digging through trying to figure out when we did the last survey, I went out on August 26th, resurveyed the beach again, and we have an updated plan for you that has that the date of mean high water marked as August 26th. So this is a very recent condition. This is basically about a week and a half, 2 weeks old now. So this is how the site looks now. Access is available over the groin. Max elevation of the groin over the beach is, I think, about 1.5 feet. So and there are places where the sand comes up and overtops it, so you can just step across. There was also a concern about how equipment would access the site. And for this particular project, we're proposing equipment access along the shore from the end of Jefferson Ave. We're expecting relatively minimal equipment needed to drive the piles. And then the boards will be replaced by hand. With that, I'll be happy to address any additional questions.
Thank you, Mark. Ian, I see your hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Mark, for putting in that extra data.
Certainly.
Any other questions or comments from commissioners? It looks like no, so we'll open it up for public comment. Does not appear that we have any public comment. Jeff, do we have everything we would need to close this?
Yes, you do.
Ian,
Second.
I move to close.
okay, Mark, I'm assuming you want that.
Please.
All right, so Ian moved to close, Linda gave the second. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Arisman, I, Golding,
Aye.
Mizzarelli,
Aye.
Klendowski,
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
All right, that carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. And that moves us on to Sunset House LLC at 15 Hallowell Lane, also represented by Mark Ritz.
Once again, good evening. Mark Ritz from Site Design, representing the applicants at 15 Hallowell. This project is also a request to repair an existing timber groin. The structures on this site have been on site since 1955, and once again, we maintain that both the groin and the bulkhead are pre-existing grandfathered structures and uses. The repair of the groin is similar to the last project I presented, basically a replacement of some piles which are starting to decay, as well as the horizontal boards. And once again, we'll be replacing sort of the upper sections. We'll do some light excavation. We assume that the lower sections, which are constantly maintained in a wet condition, they don't deteriorate as quickly as the wet drying portions up above. So we're really anticipating only replacing the upper portions of the boards and a good percentage of the piles. In addition to the repair of the groin, the bulkhead on this property is starting to lean in a seaward direction, is gradually undergoing failure. We are proposing to repair it by driving steel sheeting directly in front of the bulkhead. It is identical to the project that was approved next door at 13 Hallowell under SC 48 3225. That was approved back at the end of August 2019 with commissioners Arisman, Golding, and Engelborg all signing that particular approval. We're basically proposing the exact same type of repair and replacement of the bulkhead that was done on that project, on the project next door, to be done here on 15 Hallowell. We also went out to this site and conducted additional topo on the 26th of August to provide a current mean high water line along this portion of the property, and that's provided on this current updated plan. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mark. Are there any questions or comments from commissioners? Ian?
Yes. So, Mark, why are you using steel rather than replacing it with wood? And is that something that has been approved by the Mass Waterways?
We are using steel because the disturbance, we have a relatively stable bank and beach on this site and a rather well vegetated bank. The driving steel is considerably less disturbance. We would have to significantly excavate the beach, the bank, move a lot of sand around, disturb a lot of vegetation to dig out all the timbers and basically reconstruct the timber bulkhead. At the time that this bulkhead was installed, I believe that it was much more in the intertidal zone than it currently is. Mean high water is a good distance, probably about 40, 50 feet out from the bulkhead, currently just glancing, eyeballing it off the plan. Right now, the bulkhead, because it is well above mean high water, is actually not subject to Chapter 91 jurisdiction because it is out above mean high water. Chapter 91 jurisdiction is below mean high. Presumably, if it went back into jurisdiction, we may have to talk to them about the replacement with steel, but that was approved next door, and that was also approved about a dozen years ago on a project you heard recently at 18 Washing Pond. DEP had approved, Waterways had approved that type of replacement, and they do routinely approve this type of replacement because they feel that it does cause less disturbance than excavating out the old timber.
Thank you, Mark. Ian, do you have a follow-up? You're muted. Go ahead.
Well, I do. And so I appreciate everything you said, Mark, but it wouldn't cause any disturbance, surely, to drive a new timber bulkhead in front of the existing one any more than the steel is. And I'm just looking at the long-term, the problems we're going to have long-term as sea level rises. And so I guess that's a question that maybe we have to debate as a commission, but I don't see why driving wooden piles in front of the existing bulkhead would cause any more of a disturbance than steel. And I assume that the steel will last considerably longer than the wood. Am I correct in saying that?
The steel bulkheads tend to have typically about a 15 to 20 year lifespan in this type of environment, which is actually fairly similar to the pressure treated timber. To replace the bulkhead, we wouldn't just be driving timber piles in front of it. We would have to remove all of the wooden structure that's there, including the deadmen and tiebacks that go into the slope. All of that would have to be excavated out. New verticals would be driven, a new timber bulkhead wall would be constructed, and new tiebacks would be installed, and then the whole thing would be reburied. We would probably have to excavate approximately 15 to 20 feet into the face of the bank, in a landward direction to get everything out and to get the proper tiebacks and structural components in there. Whereas with driving the steel sheeting, it's the corrugated steel sheeting that interlocks. You drive one sheet in, you drive the next sheet right next to it, and then you drill a hole in the front and you put in a helical or a duck-billed anchor as a tieback, so you don't have to put in timber tiebacks. So it does result in considerably less site disturbance than removing the old wood and replacing it with new wood in the same location.
Well, thank you for that detailed explanation, Mark. And how far down do they go?
Typically, in a setting like this, they would go down. It would probably be roughly 20-foot sheets with kind of 2 to 3 feet of exposure at this site, probably. So that'd be 16 to 18 feet down, something like that.
Well, thank you.
Linda, I saw your hand up.
I think Mark answered the question. It's going to be far less of an impact if he does it the way he's proposing, which is what I was concerned with.
Mark Beal, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Ashley. Mark, tell me, I'm looking at the GIS map of the property and also the Google Earth. There's substantial end scouring on the west side. The east side doesn't look bad at the end of the whole project of the 5 groins, but the west side is looking pretty substantial. And I can't tell exactly how close your property line is to the house, but you're starting to work on the peninsula effect that we've seen before. And I don't know what you can do about it, but maybe you can wrap the the piling around a corner maybe have a curve to it, because the square right angle you're working on now is really causing substantial damage to a neighboring property.
If I may respond to that, actually, I looked at the same photos you looked at and had some of the same concerns. So when I was out there on August 26th, if Jeff, could you please put our plan back up and focus on the sort of western part of the groin and to the west of it? The property line is the line shown in black there that angles slightly to the northwest. And those topographic contours that are there, I went approximately 35, 40 feet west of the groin to get onto the, abutting shoreline. And you can see that, for example, the 0, 1, and 2 contours extend across the groin pretty, almost straight across, and the 3 and 4 angle back slightly, but there isn't water there, like, as is visible on Google Earth or some of the town GIS ones. Quite a bit of sand has actually rebuilt there. I suspect those photos may have been luckily timed after a bit of an erosion event, but right now there's a pretty substantial beach to the west of our groin, and we're not facing that peninsula effect as much. The beach has rebuilt kind of to a summer condition. So I didn't go too far on that property, but I did go about 30, 40 feet onto it to try to capture some of that existing sand that's there now. I was able to walk out almost to the end of our groin without getting my feet wet. It was relatively low tide, and you can see that 0 contour comes in, maybe 15 or so feet from the end of our groin at this point.
Thank you, Mark. Ian, I see your hand up.
You do, Madam Chair. And to follow up with Mark's question, Mark Beal's question, and I guess I'm being slow on the uptake here, but if it has no Chapter 91 protection, it's not an imminent danger, and it can be moved back anyway, why are we countenancing a repair to the bulkhead rather than letting nature take its course?
Oh, boy.
Margaret's, go ahead.
I think this bulkhead and groin have been on the site since the mid-1950s. They themselves are grandfathered pre-existing structures, as was recently argued and approved on 18 Washington Pond. And as you yourself and 2 other members of this board approved on the abutting property 3 years ago, very similar circumstances, very similar conditions. 13 Hallowell, they drove steel sheeting in front of their failing timber bulkhead because it was a grandfathered pre-existing structure, and they wished to repair and maintain it as normal repair and maintenance. And that was approved in August of 2019 next door. Virtually the same, set of circumstances. We're here at 15 Hallowell asking for the exact same relief and approval that was granted 3 years ago next door.
No, I mean, I totally get it, Mark. Mr. Ritz, as opposed to Mark Beals, I totally get it. And I think we've made an error and in the past, and we're looking at that peninsula effect. We had on the debate about Washington Pond Road, I believe town council opined that in fact the bulkhead itself was not a structure under the, well, it was rather more complicated than that, and that it wasn't entitled to protection as a structure per se, while if it had been a pre-76 house, it would have been. And I just think, this house has ample, but there's no threat to this house at all at this point. And we're guaranteeing by putting steel in that it's we're going to have increased erosion to the west. And so I have nothing more to add, except I think we have to be flexible in this situation going forward.
Thank you, Ian. Mark Ritz?
I would just like to ask Mr. Carlson if there was in fact an opinion rendered from town council on the whether or not the bulkhead structure itself was or was not a grandfathered use. I don't recall any formal opinion being rendered. And again, we maintain that the regulations state that any structure, any pre-existing structure that predates the regulations, which these 1950s era structures clearly do, are themselves grandfathered structures, irrespective of what structure they may or may not be protecting inland. That's really, we've discussed this a number of times on a number of projects with this board. I don't want to waste everybody's time rehashing what we've submitted and what our opinion is on that. I think everybody's pretty clear on our stance on that. So with that, I'll leave it to you guys.
Jeff, I don't know that George did come with a formal opinion for us.
No, I think one of the matters that's getting confused here too is one of the discussions with 18 Washing Pond that went on, and not to get into a different hearing, was whether the coastal engineering structure itself as being a pre-1978 structure was itself eligible for protection. I know that sounds confusing, but with that pre-78 requirement for bulkheads and things, whether or not a pre-78 bulkhead was subject to protection was part of that question. I think the regulations are pretty clear that structures that predate the regulations are entitled to some level of grandfathering, that structures that are constructed after the grandfathering date and the regulations are not. But those were two separate discussions in the 18 Washing Pond hearing.
So Mark, Linda, I see your hand up, and I'll go to you next. Mark, I have a question for you, and I'm kind of thinking about it. I realized that I approved a similar application in 2019. But of course, we learn in 3 years, and we see things that maybe change our perspective slightly. I guess what worries me, besides the fact that I think there is a more environmentally friendly solution here at this point in time, I'm also concerned about driving in the steel because it's easier and then leaving the debris behind. At what point do we say, well, the old structure needs to be removed because we're polluting the resource area? Like in 15 years, are we going to put a steel bulkhead in front of this steel bulkhead? And where does that process kind of end for us? So that's kind of a question I have out there. And then I'm curious, is that the original bulkhead from the 1950s, or has it been, redone since that time?
I believe that it has been maintained to an extent. I'm not sure. I haven't been able to track down any good records. Maintenance of these kinds of structures in, how shall we say, slightly earlier times typically happened without the benefit of going before the commission, unless the structure had a major catastrophic failure, like it was knocked out by a storm. If some piles and some components needed to be repaired, typically people just repaired and maintained them because that was permitted under their original licensing, and because they predated the regs. I know I'd been involved with a few of these many years ago where basically a notification was given to the commission or the commission staff saying, hey, we're going to do some repair work on the structure, and it was allowed. So we don't really have a great paper trail on this one and the repair history, but it's definitely not original 1955, because It's, it's modern pressure treated, more modern pressure treated timbers. 1955 one would probably be a creosote soaked nightmare.
Right. Well, I'm wondering if there's creosote soap nightmare like down below, that hasn't been getting those repairs like the top layers. And again, this is something I wasn't thinking about in 2019. And that just gives me pause to think, maybe we do need to look at what's under there and redo it completely versus just driving steel sheeting in and saying, we're done, and I realize there's an impact to the resource area in doing that, but I also think it's important to have a clear picture of what's been left down there.
I mean, that's certainly a possibility. It would significantly increase the scope of this project and would likely require the driving of some, if we had to excavate down to the full depth that this thing was originally constructed to, we would virtually have to eliminate the bank in front of the house and would likely have to shore the house itself with steel sheeting to prevent it from falling onto the beach while we excavate that far down, because it's entirely possible that we'd have to go a dozen, 15 feet down, and it would be a major earthworks. That typically has not been done on other projects. I know, closer to town, when bulkheads are replaced, that when a steel bulkhead needs to be replaced, what's typically done is it's done before it's failed completely. So you go in, you hook up the vibratory head to the each steel sheet. You cut off the anchor points, hook up the vibratory head to the steel sheets, you vibrate them out, and then you vibrate a new one in its place. Unfortunately, you can't do that with a solid timber bulkhead. It's a bit like, putting in or removing, timber piles. If the old piles haven't rotted completely, they can be vibrated out. So that's how steel ones are usually replaced. So you're not driving a new one in front of the new one in front of the new one in this sort of endless, seaward creep. But we're just proposing that, because it is a far lower impact alternative than what would have to be done to fully excavate and replace the timber.
And sorry, a follow-up. Is it possible to do like some ground penetrating radar to see how deep that stuff goes? And again, I'm just kind of thinking out loud, wondering what we're leaving behind a potential new bulkhead.
From my experience with radar, because this is essentially a vertical structure, the timber structure itself would occlude the radar pretty quickly, and we'd have a hard time, I think, getting to a too clear a picture of how far down it goes. Ground penetrating radar tends not to do so well with salt water as well. Tends to occlude the signal a little bit. So really the only way to determine that would be through some exploratory excavations.
Okay. Thank you for entertaining those questions. They're important for me processing this one. Linda, your hand had been up.
I think you pretty much circled around to what I was going to ask, because you asked the questions, sort of the questions I was going to ask anyway. What happens if this one fails? Do we put another one in front of it, another one in front of it, like you asked? But I think he answered that question, and they do have a right to maintain and repair. And I know you guys have done it several times with this type of structure. So I'm not really disturbed by it especially after you got the answer to what you asked.
Okay. Thank you, Linda. Any other questions, Seth?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Without getting too deep into what I've said before, I do think that there are ample, more environmentally friendly alternatives that I have mentioned. Seems like the applicant and the applicant's representative don't necessarily agree with that. but I'll leave it at that, that I am not satisfied with their alternatives analysis. And then secondly, perhaps to you or perhaps to Jeff, since given the concerns you've raised about, potentially toxic materials being left behind this new steel bulkhead, is there any way to condition the project to require the applicant to deal with them if they ever do become exposed? I mean, at some point, sea level is going to get to that bulkhead, and at some point, the steel bulkhead is not going to be able to protect the bank. We don't know how far that off in the future that will be, but if they do have to do something there, can they just abandon everything there, or are they going to be required to remediate the site?
Thank you, Seth. That's a great question. I'm assuming, Jeff, that we could have some sort of ongoing condition.
Yeah, we've done that condition many times to require some level of pickup or remediation related to things that expose from coastal erosion.
Yeah, thank you. And I know we've done that physically, but is there a way to also, include potential chemical contamination testing for materials that we know probably weren't, given the historic age of their construction, probably weren't the right materials for the location?
Maybe. I've never seen that condition before or someone write that, but I could certainly try to figure that out. I'll throw that out to my conservation network and see if anyone else has done that, but we can definitely get an answer to that question.
Thank you, Jeff, and thank you, Seth, for those questions. I think, especially with these grandfathered structures that seem to be able to get the slide through, I think it is important that we have as many conditions as possible to protect the resource areas into the future. Mark Ritz.
Just to point out, I mean, I know that, things were done very differently in the past, but what potentially what may or may not be there left over from original structure is at this point dating back about 70 years in a saturated wet environment. So even fairly nasty stuff that was used in the past, I'd imagine that unfortunately a lot of it has probably mobilized out of the immediate area already, just given its age at this point, because this was a 1955 structure originally. So I mean, certainly we would be willing to, should it fail, should stuff become exposed, we would be willing to remove it. But I have a feeling that there's probably not a lot of original left down there given the age.
Thank you, Mark. Mike, and then Seth, I saw your hand up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm having a little trouble with the audio.
Yeah, you're coming through pretty broken up.
Okay. Log off and log back on. That's okay.
Okay. Seth, I'll go to you while Mike's trying to fix that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm looking at a source now that I can provide to the commission that is looking at the time for environmental disposition of creosote, and it could be anywhere from a few days to up to 80 years. So that's a wide range, obviously. It most likely, as Mr. Rich is saying, may be gone from the area, but it's within that range. So I would say that, it's still important to keep these things in mind, even if it happened a long time ago.
Thank you, Seth. Any other questions or comments from commissioners? No, we're. Ian,
Yeah,
go ahead.
yes, I'm sorry, Madam Chair, but I guess I'm grinding this subject into the ground, but I thought that we had an opinion from George that 18 Washington Pond Road, when we were discussing the bulkhead, that while it was beyond our purview because of the Chapter 91 requirement license, that the argument could be made that structure was under law refers specifically to a house, not to a bulkhead. And that, and this is obviously going to be more important going forward because I happen to be, I happen to be firmly in Seth's camp, and this, I realize Mr. Ritz must be grinding his teeth at the thought of us trying to change the dynamic and considering what we've approved in the past. But I mean, either Jeff can correct me, or we should be asking for a formal opinion because this is going to come up all the time. So thank you.
Thank you, Ian. Jeff, is it possible for us to get in touch with town council and get a little bit more of a concrete opinion from them?
Yeah, I think the question that was being asked for 18 Washington Pond, from what was submitted by the applicant then, was a little bit different, where the claim was being made because the question had come up whether the structure was a pre-1978 structure, the house that was on the site, and whether it was eligible for protection at all. And at the time, the counsel for the applicant suggested that the structure itself was the pre-1978 structure eligible for protection. So that was where that kind of informal opinion came from. It didn't relate to the grandfathering within the regulations as a grandfathered pre-existing structure. Because you either qualify as a grandfathered pre-existing structure or you don't. The question itself was whether or not the site qualified for protection based upon the age of the home. So I know it sounds very similar because the years are similar, but it's a little bit different. But if I definitely have a handle on what the question is here. If we want to submit a request for legal services on that, we certainly can.
Thank you, Jeff. Ian, does that answer your question? Oh, you're muted.
Damn it, sorry. It does, and of course, it was not a pre-78 house. It was clearly constructed in 1992, 93, and got a CO in 1995. And so, yes, I would urge my fellow commissioners that we need to get a formal opinion from town council. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. So Mike, I see your hand up, and then Mark Beal, I'll go to you.
I apologize for logging off there. I was having a little trouble, so I've missed a little bit of the last debate, but I think I get the gist of what we're talking about with pre-existing structures. I just wanted to go back a few comments and say, from an environmental impact of, I'm not saying we're ready here, but of the seawall being done in steel sheeting, I would much prefer that as opposed to the wood ones, having seen some wood ones go in over the years. Nothing recently, but I feel that the steel would be a much lesser impact. But I get the gist of where we are at the moment. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mike. Mark Beal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Absent the Chapter 91 license, this has gone beyond, I think, maintenance and repair. This is a replacement. So it's a major project. I'm not sure why we couldn't ask him to put in a living shoreline It's much more environmentally friendly. It would certainly help the western end of the erosion. And that would be my thought, is to have that be a new structure that's different from the one we have now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. I know the solution that came to mind for me was more like the quarroll and beach grass type planting, a little less of an intertidal type array. But I agree. It seems like there is a more friendly alternative here. And Seth, I'll go to you. I saw your hand up.
Yeah, quickly to Mr. Beal's comment, not only can we ask the applicant, we're actually required by our regulations to ask the applicant. And the applicant is required to prove that they cannot do these things. The burden of proof is on them, not on us. And just related quickly to my comment related to chemical contamination. I won't get into everything, but let's even say it's not creosote. Let's say it's a modern wood or more modern wood. It's pressure treated wood. Most pressure treated wood is treated with CCA. That has arsenic that it leaches out of it. So no matter what materials they're using, we need to ensure in all these coastal projects not only physical conditions, but also to take into consideration the chemicals as well.
Thank you, Seth. Mark Ritz, I see your hand up.
I'd like to first address one issue pointed out by Commissioner Beal. He mentioned again end scour around the western side of these structures. And as I attempted to demonstrate on the plan with the survey data collected just about 2 weeks ago, there currently is no scour on the other side. There's a wide beach that's built up. So it comes and it goes, as you've seen many times on the beach. Second, I would like to, in no uncertain terms, state for the record that we feel the bulkhead itself, the groin itself, being circa 1955 structures, are themselves pre-existing grandfathered uses and structures entitled under the bylaw to be repaired or maintained as long as they are not expanded or made larger, etc. We feel that these structures meet the grandfathering criteria. As such, they are not subject to the typical regulations. They predate the regulations, and being the meaning of being grandfathered is that they are then not subject to the rules that were created after their existence. So we feel very strongly that we have the right to maintain, repair, replace the structure in kind, essentially. We have proposed the steel sheeting instead of an exacting kind timber replacement for the reasons previously discussed, significantly lower impact, and also that it is that type of repair and replacement has been approved on multiple other projects on the island as well as throughout the rest of Massachusetts. But we feel strongly that no, we are not subject to providing an alternatives analysis or meeting any of the other requirements of the regulations which have been enacted after these structures were on site. That's where we stood on the groin at 6 and 11 East Howell. That's where we stood on the structures at 18 Washington Pond and numerous other projects on the island. So just wanted to state that in no uncertain terms. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Linda, I saw your hand up.
That was my question. And it was always my question on the other one we did a couple weeks ago, is that we're separate. We have to keep the tying to a structure, pre-76 structure, separate from a grandfathered structure of this type. In this particular case, they're not related at all. Is that correct, Madam Chairman? Through you to Mark Ritz.
Mark, go
Your
ahead.
position.
Yes, I mean, we know that the house, the structure, the house known as the structure on the property has probably been substantially improved under your regulations since its original construction. We maintain that the bulkhead and groin themselves are grandfathered structures because they existed on site prior to the regulations, and we feel that those structures are themselves grandfathered structures and uses.
Right, all by themselves, not tied to a structure upland, all by itself.
Yes,
Predates all the regulations, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't want to I don't want to get lost in having a discussion about chapter 91 or get lost in having a discussion about a pre-76 or after 76, clearly after 76, but it's also, the house has been substantially altered because it came through the HDC a couple of times. So I just want to get it separated in my head. I'm just talking about your right to maintain and repair an existing groin. That's it. That's all I'm talking about, correct?
that is the way we are viewing it. Others may disagree.
Okay.
Seth, I see your hand up.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. Ritz, and I understand your position well. But to Mr. Carlson, if I may.
Yep, go ahead.
So our current version of regulations, I'm assuming before they were adopted, like has always been the case, they underwent legal review before adoption. Is that correct?
Yes.
And given that, I doubt that through that legal review, the commission's lawyer would allow parts of the regulations to be put in that essentially weren't applicable. So if there is a part in the coastal bank and coastal beach performance standards that requires bulkheads to not be rebuilt, even if they were originally built before 1978, if there's an environmentally friendly alternative, then that pierces the veil of the pre-existing use. I'll leave the actual decision on that to lawyers or to the courts, but that's where my opinion comes from. We wouldn't have parts of our regulations in the regulations if they weren't legally applicable. So that's how I see it. And I know not everyone agrees, but that's how I see it.
Thank you, Seth. Are there any other questions or comments from commissioners? Ian?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So Seth, I'm slightly confused. Are you saying that it says specifically within our regulations that this is not entitled to being rebuilt? Or
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes, Seth?
Yes, it does say specifically within our regulations. If you look at Coastal Bank, and I know the numbers have changed because of the codification, but if you look at performance standard number 1 under Coastal Bank, I'll skip the first sentence because it's not applicable, but it says bulkheads and groins may be rebuilt only if the commission determines that there is no environmentally better way to control an erosion problem, including in appropriate cases, the moving of threatened buildings and/or public infrastructure. Other coastal engineering structures may be permitted only upon a clear showing that no alternative exists to protect a structure that has not been substantially improved or public infrastructure built prior to 1978 from imminent danger. And the most important part of that is may not be rebuilt unless if there's a more environmentally friendly way, it says they may not be rebuilt. So I know the question really isn't about what it says. The question is about whether it applies at all. I take the opinion that it does apply. I believe it's the opinion of the applicant that it does not apply. But assuming that it does apply, then we would need these alternatives to come in and to be rebuilt instead of a bulkhead or groin. I think the central question here is, does it apply or not? And I appreciate Mr. Rich's position. I see his logical argument. I don't have any problem with his argument. We just have a fundamental difference about what applies under pre-existing use and what doesn't.
Thank you, Seth. Ian, does that satisfy your question?
It does. Thank you, Seth. Thank you, Madam Chair. I want it really to be read out so that it's on the record.
Thank you, Ian. Linda, I see your hand up.
Through you, Madam Chair, to Mark Ritz. Are you considering this? You're not considering this a tear down and rebuild. Are you considering this simply maintenance and repair? There's a difference between totally rebuilding something and maintenance and repair. What is your opinion about what the scope of this project is?
Our opinion is that we're attempting to do, well, for the groin, it's strictly maintenance and repair because there's pretty minimal damage and decay to the existing groin. The bulkhead is starting to slowly fail. It's starting to roll seaward. So we're trying to catch it before it fails completely and rolls over and part of the bank collapses. So we're viewing this as a repair and maintenance project. We are suggesting the use of steel sheeting as was done next door for the previously discussed reasons of significantly reducing impacts and amount of work, time on the beach, etc. Just the overall scope of the project is significantly smaller with steel sheeting, but we are viewing it as a repair and maintenance before, a rebuild is necessary due to, longer term failure.
Because the language that was read by Seth, it says rebuild, which is why I want to separate it in my head from maintenance and repair, which you're entitled to do, given your argument. So I just wanted to clarify that for myself.
So I do, and Margaret's, I appreciate that opinion. If you're driving an entire new bulkhead in front of this one, that's a complete replacement of what was there. You're not even really dealing with the timber bulkhead behind it. You're adding essentially new structure in front of it. That's a completely different material. So I think if we're going for like repair and maintenance, that means digging up that old structure and actually, repairing and maintaining what's there, not adding a completely new bulkhead interface is the way I kind of see this one. Because again, we're adding an entirely new material and structure in front of that. Seth, I saw your hand up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. With the bulkhead, I certainly agree. I think you're building an entire new bulkhead face with a new material that would be a rebuild. With the groin, I guess it depends on the scope of actually how many piles and horizontal timbers are being added or replaced. If it's minimal, could be maintenance. If it's significant, would be a rebuild. But with the bulkhead, I definitely don't think you meet the maintenance and repair qualification.
Margaret, I see your hand up.
In August of 2019, the property next door appeared to meet those same requirements with several of the current members of the board and with the same set of regulations in effect at the time.
Thank you, Mark. And again, we learn from experience in 3 years. I think we're having a little bit different of a discussion. I know it didn't even cross my mind back in 2019 about the chemical contamination maybe left behind by that timber bulkhead. So I think what's in the record would be a different discussion, but I appreciate that. Seth?
Thank you, Madam Chair. and this is gonna be the last thing I say on this application. Mr. Ritz, I hear you, but again, it is not particularly relevant. We have to conduct our review of each application on the basis and merits of the application and the property itself. There's no precedent in the Concom. There's no tying decisions in the past to what happens in the future. And there's no tying decisions in the present to what happens in the future. We have to deal with each site specifically, even if it's right next door, it has different characteristics and different unique qualities about it. And we have to deal with each site specifically. And new issues have arisen at this site that requires something else to be done. Thank you.
Thank you, Seth. Are there any other commissioners' comments or questions? If not, we'll look at our public comment.
We did have a couple really quickly. Dan Atherton asked, does the commission need to consult with an independent expert at the expense of the applicant in regard to these pre-existing hard structures? And then I replied, but I'll summarize that response. At the last meeting, you guys asked to see if we could get this scheduled with the party that we use for independent review for things like this. So we sent it off and are trying to get a date back when we're getting that review. We already have something else in front of them. And then they have other backlog of things. So we're trying to work that date out. But we did send it off to Mr. Berman.
Thank you, Jeff. I do think now and into the future, we should probably be consulting him more often on these. Mark Ritz,
May I just ask who that is?
I believe it's Greg Berman.
Yeah, we've used Greg Berman for our coastal projects in the past. We use them, but they engaged Mr. Berman originally as our reviewer for the Wisconsin project. And we've typically used them or help him to find someone else to use. But we can't always confirm his availability during meetings. So got to kind of reach out and see. He's got a busy workload.
Okay, so at this point, there are clearly questions from some commissioners, and we're obviously waiting on independent review. Mark Ritz, what would you like to do?
What would I like to do? Do we have any sense of the time frame for the independent review?
I was hoping to have it back for this one, to be honest. I don't see why not for the other one, because a couple other things have changed that we had sent to him that we may not need anymore. So hopefully we can get to it sooner than later. Or I can try to get someone else that may be faster if that's what people would like.
I guess since, our arguments on this one seem to be similar circular arguments to the ones we've had on related projects. And I guess that we're willing to continue for one more very reluctantly. I was prepared to close, but I guess we're willing to continue for one more to see what, if any, review we can get. So I guess we'll continue till the next meeting.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mark. I appreciate that. I think I knew when I asked you that you probably would like to close, but I appreciate you extending this until September 22nd, when hopefully we'll have an independent review.
Thank you.
Jeff Carlson.
Just to be clear for everyone too, we've also had a request during this meeting. I know independent review came up and we discussed it at the last meeting as well. So that's where we took that direction from. There's also been a request for an opinion from council related to grandfathering. that we had indicated that we would put forward on your behalf. We'll endeavor to try to have that resolved well in advance of the next meeting as well. So everyone can see it, so it's not like a day of, here it is kind of thing.
Thank you, Jeff. All right, so just to be clear, Sunset House LLC is continuing until September 22nd.
Thank you.
Thank you. And that moves us on to Boathouse Realty Trust at 52 Warren's Landing Road. I have this as represented by Leahy, but I'm not sure who's on.
So this was filed by the property owner, and we haven't been able to get a hold of them. So I guess if we could just continue this to 9/22, I think that would be great.
Okay, so Boathouse Realty Trust will continue until September 22nd. And we will move on to Good Now at 37 Massachusetts Avenue, Unit 1, represented by Brian Madden.
Thank you very much. Brian Madden from LEC Environmental Consultants, representing the applicant. The proposed project involves the reconstruction of the existing two-bedroom dwelling on the property. The property itself consists of 3 dwelling condominium units. This is the easterlymost one. It's at the end of Nantucket. Site is located entirely within a coastal dune and flood zone, velocity zone, elevation 9. And so what is being proposed is to upgrade, rotate the structure and put it on a pile foundation. Under existing conditions, the dwelling, I believe, is supported by like cinder block type foundation and has becoming overwhelmed by the dune, and it's inhibiting the dune's natural migration and movement of sand either laterally or landward. The proposed project, the house is going to be rotated. Under existing conditions, it's 536 square feet. There's a 2 square foot reduction to 534. The deck area is going to be minimally reduced from 254 square feet to 238 square feet. So that's a 16 square foot or 18 cumulative square feet reduction of structure. Again, the foundation is going to be a pile supported foundation. First floor elevation is going to be 13. The structure itself and the improved foundation will make it more coastal resilient and enhance dune interests related to flood control and storm damage prevention. And again, it will allow for the dune to more freely migrate and for the ability of sand to move and or accumulate sand. A tight tank is proposed immediately north of the structure. The entire work footprint itself has been consolidated to minimize disturbance. Any disturbed areas within the defined limit of work will be restored in kind. And the existing shed on the property is proposed to be refurbished and placed and put on sonotubes. And the shed itself is just going to be used for housing the utilities. And so again, there's a minimal square foot reduction in structure on site. But the big improvement is the improved foundation, pile supported foundation. And I guess with that, I'll turn it over to questions.
Thank you, Brian. Any questions or comments from commissioners? Seth?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Is there currently a tight tank and you're replacing it, or what's the sewage disposal system now?
Yeah, Don Bracken also here to represent the client. Right now, it's connected to a common system with the other 2 units. It's just a septic tank and 2 leaching trenches. So, you know, as you know, everything has to be upgraded in Nantucket to an IA system to pull any building permit for any new work. So, you know, rather than, you know, installing a separate IA system for this one particular unit and tie into the old system and put a new system, we felt the best alternative would be the tight tank. The Board of Health regulations do specifically allow tight tanks in this specific area. So.
So if I think if anything, this basically minimizes the disturbance out in the dune. The tank is very tight to the proposed structure, whereas you can see the outline of the existing leach field is further back out in the dune.
Any other questions or comments from commissioners? I know, Brian, I have a question. So the shed on sonotubes, is it essentially still within the dune, or how elevated is this going to be?
So existing grade there is, let's see, that contour is 9. You know, I think it probably won't have it as high as the house, so elevation 13, but we could certainly increase it a few feet, a couple of feet at least. Yeah, I mean, I think there's some flexibility there. We'll put it that. I mean, I defer to what the preference would be.
Okay. And then my other question, is this a pre-78 structure?
Yeah, I believe this structure dates back to the 50s. I was just looking at some aerial photographs, and the most or the oldest one I have where I can see it is in 66, but I think looking at the assessor's records, I think all 3 of these structures originally were 1950s.
Okay. I guess, you know, my feeling as far as, because you said mechanicals and things might go in the shed, you know, I think I would rather have those in the main structure versus having connections needing to go between a shed structure and the house in, you know, a velocity zone in the dune. I think the more kind of contained we can keep those things, probably the better for the site overall. I don't know if that's a possibility.
If I could ask a return question. So obviously this is a very small structure itself. So the ability to house mechanicals interior on first floor elevation where we're not going to have a vault below that would otherwise impede dune migration. You know, I don't know the exact square footage of what we need for utilities, but would the commission consider maybe slightly expanding that house footprint of 534 to include like a corner where the mechanicals could be housed? And I would presume, and this may be a little bit presumptuous, that it would be less than 70 square feet and it would be a reduction in structure, further reduction structure on site.
I mean, I know I would rather see that. I mean, I live in a small house that like I have to have standing AC and I have to like deal with all my mechanicals in my small house. So, you know, I think that they probably can too. But I saw Seth's hand go up and then Linda's.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think definitely if the building footprint can be consolidated to remove the shed and put the mechanicals in the area or the square footage area that the shed would have taken up, it's a lot better. It gives more space for the dune to expand, and the elevation of the house compared to the sonotube shed is better. So I would like to see that.
Thank you, Seth.
Yeah, we can certainly take a look at that. And, you know, we are waiting on heritage, so we will need to continue, but appreciate all the comments.
Well, what about
those here.
the option of attaching the shed to the main house and raising it up to the same level as the house? sort of as an appendage, but not like finished space, but just for the utilities.
I
And
mean, I think,
there's still a net decrease in square footage.
yeah, I mean, I just as soon have it as one structure with one set of structural
Okay.
supports, in this very dynamic coastal zone. Linda, I saw your hand pop up a few times.
Yeah, I'm quite familiar with this property. Someone I worked for built them. And back in the 50s, early 50s. And the dune has, even when we had the big dune in front of us and the road and all the other cottages that are now gone between us and the water. But we had to go out and dig out these cottages with a shovel every single spring, all three of them. So this has been going on for a long time. I'm not adverse to the suggestion that Don just made about attaching the shed, a smaller shed, to the side of the house. It's not, you're going to run into ground cover problems for zoning, and you're going to run into all kinds of stuff. I wouldn't mind having it attached to the house, elevated at the same height, so everything's out of the ground where it's supposed to be. So I think that wasn't a bad suggestion as far as I'm concerned, but I'm well familiar with these structures and having to go out with a shovel every year and dig them out, because you couldn't even find them half the time because the beach was that dynamic coming in from the north side. So it was not entertaining, I can tell you, but it was just something we had to do every year. And it's been going on for, 50 years, this movement of the dune every single winter. But I don't think that's a bad idea. But I think we also might run into issues with the ground cover, et cetera, et cetera. If it's a separate structure, less than 200 square feet, there's no ground cover issue. But the minute it attaches to the house, there may be a ground cover issue for other purposes. So just, there's a lot of moving parts to this property.
Thank you for that perspective, Linda, and we'll leave it to Brian and Don to kind of sharpen their pencil and design what best, I guess, kind of compromises these interests. Seth, I saw your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not opposed to Mr. Bracken's proposal per se to sort of snug the shed up to the house and raise the grade. I just honestly think it's going to be more work by the time you do that than to just build a bump out, but I'll let them decide.
Thank you, Seth. Any other comments or questions from commissioners? Looks like no, so I'll check on public comment. Does not look like we have public comment. Brian and Don, would you like to continue for 2 weeks?
Yes, please.
Okay, so this will continue until September 22nd.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And that moves us on to Rabbit Run Road 1 LLC at 26 Rabbit Run Road, represented by Brian Madden.
Thank you very much. For the record, Brian Madden from LEC Environmental, representing the applicant. The proposed project involves some vertical structural renovations to the existing dwelling, adding an addition, septic upgrade, and some restoration activities. And yeah, perfect. If we could zoom in on that, because it's just so I can clearly walk through everything. So resource areas proximate to the existing dwelling include salt marsh, bordering vegetated wetlands, up gradients of the salt marsh, and then coastal bank basically to the north and to the southwest of the house footprint. A lot of overlapping buffer zones here that we've colored in different colors. Majority of the structure itself, aside from a small little triangle, is within the 50-foot buffer zone to the coastal bank. But we have highlighted out the 50-foot buffer zone to the vegetated wetlands, the BVW, which I think is pertinent here, in addition to the 25-foot to the coastal bank in red. So the proposed project, kind of walk everyone through it, and certainly don't hesitate to jump in with questions. But on the east side, the right-hand side of the dwelling, on this view, there's an existing garage. It's a sunken garage that has timber retaining walls on both sides of it, and a gravel driveway surface that comes off of Rabbit Run Road. And this is just south of Abrams Point, for reference. But the garage is proposed to be demoed, and a proposed addition is going to replace and overlap that garage, but it has been rotated to the south. So we're increasing wetland setbacks to the closest resource area, and that is top of a coastal bank. Under existing conditions, the garage is 18 linear feet away. Under proposed conditions, the addition is 26 linear feet. And basically overlapping with the existing structure, and with a slight expansion to the south within existing lawn areas. And then you'll see a kind of a jog on the front of the building that's basically just connecting to the front porch area. That whole front entrance is being reconfigured as shown on the plan. On the backside, north side of the dwelling, there is a cantilevered balcony overhang as part of the structural vertical renovations with the house. Under existing conditions, there are two pervious parking areas, one in front of the garage and one further to the southwest. We are proposing to eliminate both of those and consolidate to a centrally located pervious parking area as shown, that maximizes setbacks away from the resource areas. And additional structural improvements on the west side of the dwelling. There's an existing covered porch and then an open deck. We're proposing to remove a portion of that deck that does occur within the 25-foot buffer zone to the coastal bank. We are proposing to remove 309 square feet of that deck. And then a portion of that deck further to the east is going to be converted to a covered enclosed porch area. Under existing conditions, roof runoff is just basically directed towards the resource areas via downspouts. We are proposing to install subsurface infiltration systems around the structure to collect that roof runoff and promote recharge. There is a proposed septic upgrade. So the existing septic system, Jeff, if you're able to zoom out here a little bit. So the septic system is in the very far southern portion of the site. There we go. And so it runs parallel to Rabbit Run Road, and then there's a corner of the property of upland in this location, which is basically at the corner of Shakamo and Rabbit Run Road. There's an existing cesspool in this location. We are proposing to upgrade that to an IA system with leach field. And the leach field itself is located greater than 100 feet away from the BVW system that is flagged down at the toe of the slope, but it is located at least partially within the 100-foot buffer zone to the top of the coastal bank. But it has been designed to maximize that separation to the greatest extent feasible in that corner. But again, it is greater than 100 feet from the actual wetlands itself. It is an upgrade over existing conditions. And so, sorry, Jeff, if you don't mind going back up to the proposed view. So we are proposing to revegetate portions of the existing lawn areas that are within closer proximity to resource areas, a significant portion within the 25-foot buffer zone to the coastal bank, and actually a small portion of the coastal bank that does extend into lawn areas, basically just southwest of the deck area. We are proposing to plant native shrubs and consisting of arrowwood, beech plum, and bayberry, along with eastern red cedar saplings where we can accommodate them. The cumulative square foot of revegetation within the buffer zone and resource areas is 2,041 square feet. So we believe the restoration of those areas, increasing the wetland setback, structurally speaking, and the upgraded septic IA system will result in improvement over existing conditions. And we've requested a waiver concurrently for that work activity, and I'd be happy to answer any questions at this point.
Thank you, Brian. Are there any questions or comments from commissioners? Great. So Brian, I know we went out for a site visit to this site. I think everyone was there, but Linda, if I'm correct. And one of the locations that concerned me was extending that covered porch. Just when I think about like wildlife stability, like mostly birds, to like get across the site, I feel like increasing that roof pitch would have a detrimental effect on that location. So that's something that came to mind. And it looks like you're going to be revegetating an area that to me maybe looked like they were dumping landscape waste at some point. Is that true? Like on, I guess it would be like the south, maybe west corner of the house?
I have not been out there this summer, but was out there, I think, last time spring. But certainly if there's any yard waste that has been deposited, we can certainly clean that up and, enforce proper disposal of that and, educate the landscapers that, we can't be dumping towards the resource areas.
Well, thank you. It didn't look like there was anything recently dumped, but it looked like
Okay.
there maybe had been and then been cleared out. It just looked a little bit suspect.
Okay. Thank you.
Those are kind of my only thoughts. So if there are no questions or comments from commissioners at this point, I'll see if there's public comment. Mike, I see you have your hand up. Oh, you're muted.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Brian, I noticed the deer pressure was pretty heavy on that site. I don't know if they would really have any success with the cedar saplings, unless there was, unless they were fenced or something. So they might want to come up with a slightly better plant alternative than the cedar saplings. And then just to follow up on Ashley's comment, I think what the area may have previously been a site where some mulch or compost or something got dumped, but it was stirred up clearly on a deer path. So just my comments on that area. So I don't think there was, as Ashley said, any debris there, but could have been in the past and recently stirred up by the deer activity.
Thank you, Mike. Seth, did I see your hand go up?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I would just like to say I also agree with the comments related to the extension of the covered enclosed porch. I think that expanding that roof line in that area has wildlife impacts, but also wetland scenic view impacts. So I would like to see that part of the application reconsidered.
Thank you, Seth. Any other questions or comments from commissioners? Ian?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So I just would like to add my opinion to agree with Seth. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. So if there are no other comments or questions from commissioners, we will open this up for public comment. Does not appear that we have public comment at this point. Brian, are you willing to ask your client about the roof pitch and kind of reconsidering some of that design?
Yeah, we can certainly look into that. I was trying to pull a linear foot of what that increase is. I guess height wise, I don't have elevations to know if that is being elevated at all. I can certainly ask that question, but the bump out, sorry, I'm just maybe on the order of like 10, 15 feet. So I think I'd probably would like to just investigate that a little bit further because, right now the pitch, I'm just looking at some of the photos is, mostly enclosed space. But maybe we could provide some clarity on exactly what is being proposed in that location, but, and then look at, the size and orientation of it as well, based on the comments.
Okay. Well, thank you, Brian. So would you like to continue for 2 weeks in order to do that?
Yes, please.
Okay. So if there's no further questions, this will continue until September 22nd.
Thank you.
Thank you. And that moves us on to Ashford Advisors LLC at 4 Charles Street, represented by David Haynes.
Good evening again. David Haynes for the applicant. This is, I think, going to be a little bit more straightforward than some of the ones you've been hearing lately. We're proposing to raise an existing house up to above the flood elevation. It's in the buffer zone to a bordering vegetated wetland, which is a shrub swamp with a wet meadow in the center that extends from Charles Street over to Bathing Beach Road, and the 100-year flood elevation, which is elevation 7. It's not a velocity zone. The entire lot is, most of the lot is, two-thirds of the lot are within the buffer zone to the BVW that's on the opposite side of Charles Street. The site is almost all lawn except for the house and the garage and driveway. The house will, nothing is being done to the garage or the driveway. The house is being raised up, being placed on helical piers, and a small addition is being constructed on the opposite side of the house from the BVW. All the existing structure magically is just outside of the 50 feet to the bordering vegetated wetland, and so no waivers for any structures within 50 is required. We are asking for a waiver for the placement of the helical piers within 2 feet of the groundwater table. And I will go into that waiver a little bit more. The house will be up above the flood elevation, and underneath the helical piers will be put in. There will be a structural beam that will be placed on top of the piers. The skirting around the foundation, around the edge of the house, will have flood vents to allow for flooding underneath there. And I have confirmed that the surface of that area will all be just stone and no impervious surface. And the notice of intent, it did say there was a possibility of a rat slab with drains through it, but that the builder has decided to do just stone. Obviously, we're going to have to extend the steps going down to the ground a couple of feet, but that is all outside of 50 feet from the bordering vegetated wetland. The waiver that we're asking for is for structures within 2 feet of the water table. We're justifying it in that there is no reasonable alternative. The water table is within 2 feet of the surface of the ground, and there's no way to do it. But also those helical piers will not displace floodwater, will not create impervious surface, and will not restrict the flow of groundwater. So no reasonable alternative and no adverse impact. Other than that, the landscaping will just be restabilization, recreating what's already there, and getting the house up out of the ground. And the addition that's being constructed in the northeast corner is partially over existing deck, and it's outside of 50. With that, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, David. Are there any questions or comments from commissioners? Looks like no. So we'll see if there's any comments from the public. Also looks like no. Jeff, do we have everything we would need to close this one?
Yes, you do.
David, would you like to close?
Yes, please.
Okay. Is there a motion to close? Motion made by Seth, seconded by Linda. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Arisman, I, Golding,
Aye.
Mizzarelli, were you on for that one, Mike?
Yes, I was. Aye.
Okay. Plandowski,
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
All right, that carries unanimously.
Thank you very much.
And that moves us on to Hitherview Associates LLC at 26 Tennessee Avenue, represented by Mark Ritz. Did Mark leave? 'Cause I'm not seeing him here.
I don't see him there.
Maybe we'll skip that one for the moment and then go back since I don't see a representative.
I'll try to get him really quick, and see if he's gonna be back on. But I would
Okay.
say if you guys could just do 32 Holbert first, that
Perfect.
would be great.
All right, so we'll move on to 32 Holbert Trust at 32 Holbert Avenue, represented by Art Gasparo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm before you tonight with a notice of intent application for work within the flood zone as well as partially within the buffer zone to a vegetated wetland on an existing vacant lot down in Brant Point at 32 Halbert Ave. Many of you maybe recall this site from an RDA that we did last year. And we're now back for residential development on this property. And shown on the plan is the existing conditions in terms of the topography and surrounding streets. As you know, this area is served by town water, town sewer, and some overhead utilities. We'll be bringing in water, sewer, electric, cable, telephone. We'll be constructing the structure shown here, residential structure, in accordance with all requirements for building codes within the flood zone. We're not requesting any waivers as related to this project. There's a little bit of grading that's proposed because there is a bit of a little bit of an existing hump, if you will, there. And so there's not really filling that's happening. We're actually taking that down just a little bit. And but I know often you don't see proposed grades down in this area. So we just wanted to show sort of the slight changes that were happening there and what the finished conditions would be. I believe the project meets all of your performance standards, will not have an adverse or negative impact on the interest protected by the commission. There's not a detailed landscape plan for the site, other than they would like to ring the site with hedge, and then the owner has agreed that any plantings around the foundation or on the site would be native and would be selected from the brochure of planting with native species in mind on Nantucket. And with that, I'd be happy to take questions or concerns that you may have with the application.
Thank you, Art. Are there any questions or comments from commissioners? Mike?
Art, just wanted to point out that the plan has it on your plan has the property surrounded by privet hedge, and so that's not native material by the Concom standard. So there's just a little disconnect on the plan versus the brochure that you presented.
Art, go ahead.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. Yes, I realize that. That's why we showed the privet hedge, and then any other plants on the property would be selected from that brochure. Just
So
to clarify that. And typically, if I may, typically, the commission has allowed the planting of privet. I can't remember honestly the Latin name of the two species. The ligifolium, I think it is. I'm sure I see Seth smiling. I'm sure he's gonna. But the one that you would like us to plant is the one that we would be willing to have a condition that we would plant.
There's like 10 different species of privet in the horticultural trade, and only one of them, obtusifolium, I think, is considered invasive, so not that one. But sorry, Madam Chair, if I may, I would just say I understand the client, and I understand. I did see on the plan it said all other species other than the privet will be native. I don't really think is a huge concern, but I would just communicate to your client that if they do want to consider a hedge that is native, that is an alternative to privet, there are plenty of options available. So maybe they're just not aware of that, and see if they would be interested. But I don't necessarily think we can require it, especially because most of it is outside of the 100-foot buffer to the wetland anyway.
Well, thank you, Mike, for your original question. And Seth and Mike, I see your hand back up.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I probably didn't state it clearly. I just was confused by the insertion of the brochure versus the plan. I wasn't saying no privet. I just was looking for the clarification of what we were trying to do there.
Thank you, Mike. I as well was slightly confused by that, so I'm glad we have the clarification from Art.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments from commissioners? If not, we'll open it up for public comment. It does not appear we have public comment at this time. Jeff, do we have everything we would need to close? Art,
Yes,
would you like to close?
Yes, please.
Is there a motion to close? Motion made by Mark. Is there a second? Seconded by Joe. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Arisman, I, Golding,
Aye.
Mazzarelli,
Aye.
Plandowski,
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
All right, that carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, Art. So we'll go back in the agenda to Hitherview Associates LLC at 26 Tennessee Avenue, represented by Margaret's.
I apologize. I completely forgot I had this one on. Mark Ritz from Site Design representing the applicants at 26 Tennessee. Again, sorry for the confusion. What you have is an application to upgrade a septic system with very little work within the wetland buffer zone, basically septic line and water service coming from the street. I don't know if Jeff can throw the plan up there for me. The entire property is located within the floodplain. Because of groundwater conditions on the site, we have to do a little bit of mounding to make the septic system compliant with groundwater separation. So we are doing the septic system outside the 100-foot buffer zone to the wetland, but within land subject to coastal storm flowage. We are unfortunately, we have to do a little bit of fill to maintain that separation to groundwater for the septic requirements. We're installing an IA system, and there's absolutely no alternative location on the site where we can put in a better system. And basically, you know, we're required to put in this system because the one on site is old and is not in good shape. So we are doing the best we can given the site conditions. We're doing about 1.5 to 2 feet of fill in the location of the septic. And I wish we could do it differently, but this is the best alternative available to us. With that, I'll be happy to entertain any questions.
Thank you, Mark. Are there any questions or comments from commissioners? You know, I realize that this is the only option. I guess I just worry about potential impacts to the neighboring property in the event of a flood, that they are going to take on some of the impacts. Is there any way to mitigate on site? And I don't know how you would do that.
Groundwater, you know, unfortunately is so high on site and we have so little space anywhere. I mean, the only thing, potential mitigation would be to create, you know, a pit somewhere on site. But it would be so close to groundwater that, you know, I don't know that it would do much. Just as a rough calculation, we did a calc given our site area, our total, just our property, not talking about abutters, but the amount of water that would be displaced by the proposed fill that we're putting in would elevate the water level on our property about 1.75 inches. You know, maximum case scenario, you know, across just the confines of our property. It was I think like 1.6, I believe, or 1.67 was the calculation, about 1.2 inches. So given that we don't really have much of an alternative, you know, as that spread out onto you know, abutting properties and into the street south of us, that small increase in water elevation would quickly dissipate to something relatively insignificant, because it wouldn't be more than 1 inch and 2/3, you know, just on total on our property.
Okay, thank you, Mark, for calculating that out for us. All right, so if there aren't any other questions or comments from commissioners, we'll see if there's public comment. Does not appear that we have public comment at this point. Jeff, do we have everything we would need to close?
Yes, you do.
Mark, would you like to close?
Please.
Is there a motion to close? Motion made by Mike, seconded by Linda. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Arisman, I, Golding,
Aye.
Mizzarelli,
Aye.
Landowski,
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
All right, that carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. That moves us on to amended orders of conditions. Dare I say it, I thought this one would never actually come before us. Phillips trustee at 19 East Tristram Ave, represented by Chloe Coggins.
Maybe not.
I hate to disappoint, but we actually have continued this.
Oh, every time.
I know.
Sorry, it's to 9:22.
9:22. Did I just miss a new posted agenda somewhere?
No, I think we probably sent the one out and then they came in after it got posted and then we made the changes, but it's all
Yeah,
right.
we had emailed, I don't know, it was too
It
late.
probably got sent to Lisa. Lisa was out today, so we may
Okay.
have missed it or it didn't get posted, so that's fine.
All right, well, sorry for the confusion. So Phillips trustee, 19 East Tristram Ave is continued until September 22nd. Sorry to pull you back on camera, Chloe.
No worries.
All right, so that moves us on in the public meeting. We don't have RDAs, no minor mods. So we'll move to certificates of compliance. We have 12 North Road Trust at 12 North Road.
So just to update really quickly, we had asked a couple of questions back to the applicant here, so they requested a continuance to 9/22.
Okay, so this will continue until September 22nd as well. And that moves us on to orders of conditions. Jeff sent these out earlier. And we will begin with Town of Nantucket at 98, 100, and 104 Washington Street.
So just to kind of run through, this was the invasive species project at 98, 100, and 104. Again, waivers, we grant waivers through the regulations. I actually have the wrong section number. Sorry, where it says section 5.03, there's a new number there. I'll pull it together in a minute. It's a pre-codified number. Other than that, we have our pretty standard practices for invasive species removal.
Thank you, Jeff. Seth, I see your hand up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd asked for this before. I don't particularly care if it's a finding or a condition, but we talked about how this is a heavily used public recreational site. So if we could add something in requiring physical signage of work and also maybe digital notice in appropriate town newsletters or whatever it may be.
Thank you for that reminder, Seth. Any other questions, comments, amendments while Jeff is typing? Looks like no.
All right. So new condition 25. I just put prior to work being conducted, the applicant shall provide notice to the public through physical notice at the site, on the town website, and through available social media platforms.
Seth,
Let me revise
Yeah.
that.
Sorry to be like super specific, but can we give like a certain amount of days?
Yeah, that's why I actually just typed, I put at the start of it, it now says at least 1 week prior to work being conducted, the applicant shall provide notice to the public through physical notice at the site, on town website and through available social media platforms.
Good. Any other thoughts on this one? And if not, would somebody like to make a motion to approve as amended? Mark, are you making that motion?
I'll second.
All right, seconded by Linda. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Arisman, I, Golding,
Aye.
Mizzarelli,
Aye.
Landowski,
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
All right, that carries unanimously. Moves us on to 13 Commercial Street LLC at 13 Commercial Wharf.
But you want to change rooms now? I'm gonna be another hour probably. You want to go in there? I'll come in here.
Mark, you got to mute.
I just did it for him.
Perfect.
So all right, so 13 Commercial Wharf. This was the Paul Santos and Chloe Coggins project. I don't think I need to introduce it that much. It was the elevation of the structure and renovation of the structure that had the stair sets that were in question. So through here, just I have pretty standard conditions. The waiver is a little bit more involved than normal, I think is the nice way to put it. I can read it out loud if people want, or if people want to read it on their own, that's fine with me too.
I know I have it up on my screen. Would anybody like Jeff
I can
to
share my
read
screen
aloud
too,
or
if that's
share the
helpful.
screen? All right. No answer. I'm fine reading on my own.
So, and just to be clear, the waiver that's in question is the waiver to the 50-foot setback as it relates to primarily the stairs on the commercial street side of the building, as they are the new structure.
Thank you, Jeff. I want to give everybody a moment to read this, but when you're finished, if anybody has any questions, comments, amendments, go ahead. All right, and if there are no questions, comments, or amendments, would somebody like to make a motion to approve as drafted?
I'll make that motion, Madam Chair.
Okay, and Mike, are you seconding?
Yes.
So motion made by Linda, seconded by Mike. By roll vote, Beal,
I think he moved.
I'm
There he is.
I'm still thinking, Madam Chair. Go, come back to me, please.
all right, I'm going out of order, Terry. Engelborg,
Abstain.
Jesus.
okay. Arisman, I, Golding,
Opposed.
Mizzarelli,
Aye.
Landowski,
Aye.
Williams,
Aye.
Beal.
Aye.
All right, so that carries with Commissioner Engelborg abstaining and Commissioner Golding opposed. And then, Jeff, do we not have a draft for the 9 Mass Ave?
No, I wasn't sure where that was gonna go, so we hadn't had discussion or a sense of the board from previously before. But does anyone have any thoughts on conditions they would like to see on that?
Thoughts
Not
from-
really.
I was gonna include our standard kind of monitoring for walkways and making sure debris doesn't get caught along the pilings like typical. And then photo monitoring for the length of the structure.
That was pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I think just the photo monitoring to ensure that it revegetates, I think is great.
Yeah.
And then I guess, Jeff, for that one, would we need a finding as to why we aren't like following the DEP guidelines, or is that not necessary?
It's not necessary, right? It's not legally required. I think a finding that got into it where you talked about the fact that you were allowing it to be less than the guidelines due to the fact of it being narrow and using fibergrate as the decking surface that allows additional light penetration. Something to that degree, I'm not going to try to wordsmith it on the fly here, may not be a bad idea, because that way, at least if someone looks back at it in the future, they would know that it was directly related to the decking surface.
Thank you, Jeff. Ian, I see your hand, and then Linda, I'll go to you.
You do, Madam Chair. So I think it would be important, Jeff, to add a component for the wetland scenic view, because we know how it's been determined in the past, how that's very much a matter of opinion. And I think we're unanimous here, as is the applicant. And also perhaps what both Ashley and Seth in other applications were talking about the impact that a railing would have on the bird life there. So personally, I would like to see as much of that incorporated as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. Linda?
That's where I was headed. Also, it keeps it under the building code requirement of 30 inches, which would require a railing regardless of the 1.5. If it's under 30 inches, it does not require a railing for code purposes. So there's a lot of factors involved with why it's a positive to keep it that low also for those purposes, because they were forced into a railing if it was 30 inches or above.
Great. All right, well, thank you for your input, guys. And I'm confident Jeff is going to draft something great for our next meeting. So this will move us on to Stark Point LLC at 16 Easton Street.
So I did put kind of the interesting finding in there. I know the waterproof vault was kind of a controversial subject for this one. So I did kind of try to memorialize that with this. The commission finds that the increase in number of engineered openings in the foundation offsets the area displaced by the waterproof vault and therefore does not decrease the flood storage capacity of the lot. That may not be the best way to put that, but for whatever reason, that's how my brain thought about it earlier today. So I'd happily take suggestions or thoughts.
All right, thank you, Jeff. I see Seth's hand going up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I disagree. It doesn't minimize the flood flow through capacity, but it does minimize the ability for the flood waters to settle on site. So we have to be careful about the wording because the performance standard says absorb and displace. It does reduce absorption.
Thank you, Seth. I can see Jeff thinking about that one. I'm as well thinking about it. Mark, I see your hand up too.
As I recall that 2 weeks ago, we had a lot of discussion on this vault, and I was surprised it didn't come up at the hearing, and it got away from me from not bringing it up. And I was the architect expressed willingness to put all the utilities either on a pad, not on a pad, in the shed, I believe, or the garage. And I'm sorry we didn't bring that up at the hearing. So I'm not particularly happy with the vault. Maybe it's a little late to bring that up, but I just think that the vault. I mean, next, if we allow the vault, can we then allow hot tubs? You know, in-ground hot tubs, even though this is waterproof. Suddenly they're digging holes where they shouldn't be digging holes, and it affects the flood absorption. So. Any suggestions?
No, I appreciate your comment. You know, they didn't provide any other information really about the vault and changing it today. So I guess that is a little bit of a roll of the dice in that regard.
They made it smaller, didn't they, Madam Chair?
They made it a little
Took about
smaller.
100 square feet out of it, I think.
Yeah. But you know, it still obviously does impact the site's ability to hold floodwater.
Yeah.
Jeff?
I will say too, right, because we drafted it tonight, we don't have to issue this order tonight. If we want to try to wordsmith that out a little bit, I can look at it a bit more for a better way to put that, and we can issue it at the next meeting. So we don't absolutely have to issue it tonight. So don't feel like we have to if we can't figure it out. We have 21 days, so.
Well, if I may, Ashley,
Mark, go ahead.
are we too late to say the vault can't go in and we should have the utilities raised in the garage?
We have to open the hearing again so they can represent.
Yeah, I mean, that discussion was had last time. So, I mean, although the question wasn't asked explicitly today, I mean, the commission was certainly uncomfortable with that vault. Seth, I see your hand going up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think we have three reasonable paths to proceed that would all meet the legal requirements of our review. We can proceed with the vault if commissioners' concerns have been assuaged. Mine certainly haven't, even with the reduction in size. We could say in the order that the rest of the project is permitted, but the subsurface vault is not permitted. And then they could always come back with an amended order to figure that out later, since it was talked about. Or we could deny the project, but that's probably not the best way to consider just one area of concern.
I would support that, Linda, as I mean, Ashley, as a good point of saying let's approve it without the vault and let them proceed on the project and just have them come back if they're unhappy. I don't want to deny it. That slows things down too much.
Okay, Linda, I see your hand up.
I would rather make a motion to reopen the hearing and continue it so they have an opportunity to respond to that rather than make a final decision here. We're still at the same meeting. So we can motion to reopen it and then continue it so they have a chance for the next meeting.
I don't know that I would vote to reopen it at this point.
And actually,
that motion, Ian,
we're not at the same meeting, so we can't reopen.
That's not true, but I'll defer.
Mike, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, it's for the utilities, so I'm not sure exactly what the right motion is going forward, but something they're going to have to consider, whether it's relocating utilities or how the vault is going to affect it. So I'm a little torn. I just don't know what the right solution is, except to notify them that it's coming back around.
Yeah, and I mean, I think, you know, again, Seth very articulately outlined our options. I think we definitely have the option to approve, you know, without approving the subsurface vault, you know, to give them either time to amend, come back, you know, for reasons they might need, and they can still proceed with the project. I know that's where I would settle on this one. But of course, I think Linda wants to reopen. We have a few differing opinions here.
Jeff, do you have an opinion?
I'm thinking.
Yeah, I can see
You
him.
can hear the wheels turning.
Man, I'm just trying to look up something really quickly. So continue to discuss amongst yourselves while I double check on something.
Any other?
Well, yeah, I like your thought, Ashley, for approving without the vault, just, and let them come back if they're so inclined, because Lisa Bonicelli did offer that if we were uncomfortable with the vault, they could put the utilities in one of the structures on site.
Out of the ground.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you, Mark. And I saw Seth's hand up.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And procedurally, I don't know what's better to, do what I proposed or to do what Linda proposed by reopening the hearing. But if we do reopen the hearing and then they change their mind and they said they don't really want to relocate the utilities, they want to keep the vault, and we're back at the same place that we are right now.
Mhm.
I would prefer to just issue the order, positive order without the vault. Let them figure out what they want to do. Either accept that or amend, but it's in their court, not in ours.
Thank you, Seth. Linda?
Because all the other alternative, like everybody else down there, is they're elevating the AC units and all the other equipment up above the floodplain and putting lattice. The HCC makes them put lattice around it or some sort of a screening around it. But a lot of the times you'll see them coming into the ACC and they're elevated up to the first floor level above flood. So they got that option as opposed to digging a vault. I don't understand why they came up with that. Is that the first time you guys have seen that solution down there in Brant Point?
I know Lisa Botticelli, mentioned a previous application that was before my time on the commission with one. So there's not one that I can recall. Ian, can you recall one?
No, I can't. And I think, Linda's put her hand, a finger on it, is they just don't want to have it as an unseemly part of their lot, and it doesn't make any sense at all where they are to have it in a vault. So I think we should condition it and without the vault and have them come in. And as Mark said, Lisa was open to putting it, above the floodplain in a separate building. So thank you.
Thank you, Ian. So
Are you ready for a motion, Madam Chair? I'm happy to make one if you're ready.
Jeff's given us the 1 minute because I think he's doing some wordsmithing.
Yeah, so I'm kind of taking it that we're going to go this route. I think it's probably the best route as well. I was just checking out the purposes because the applicant isn't here. So I think reopening the hearing and then continuing it using the ability to continue without their consent since they're not here for more information. I don't know. I feel like if you're reopening public hearings, they should be present for it. And I'd rather kind of do it this way. Because at least then they can proceed with the rest.
I'll second Mark's motion without the vault, if that's where he was going.
Yes, let me just get the language put together so that way we all know what we're approving.
All right, so we're going to practice patience for a moment, everybody.
It's a good thing to have.
Does that mean I have time for my ice cream?
I don't know.
It's in the freezer.
Yeah.
Just calling out to me. Come eat me.
Jealous of all you guys who are snacking and eating during the meeting.
Well, you had a cup that was the size of the Titanic there.
I have a big tea to keep me going for the meetings.
I also thought it was a big bowl of soup.
I
Healthy
did too,
soup.
except that I saw the tea bag. It looked like a tiny little piece of paper next to this huge white thing.
I do multiple dinners. I panic that we're going to go too long and I won't have to eat, and I got to eat. So I eat early and then I'll eat when I'm done. But
Yeah, I got a Henry sandwich at 2:45 and didn't eat it until about an hour ago.
So actually, that isn't a large vodka and tonic with a tea bag taped to the side.
I don't drink alcohol, so nope, just tea for me.
All right,
I don't either. We're cheap dates.
I think I got it.
All right, Jeff's got
So,
it.
in additional findings, 2, I've changed it from what it originally was to the commission finds that the subsurface waterproof vault, due to it diminishing the lot's ability to absorb and contain floodwaters, is not approved by this order.
but everything else is.
Yes.
I'll make
Okay.
that motion as amended.
I'll
Yeah.
second that.
All right, motion made by Mark, seconded by Linda.
Can I say something before you vote really quick?
Yes.
Just to interrupt. So just want to make it clear to everybody that if they came back and amended the order to put it back in, the commission does have the ability to essentially strike that as a finding and replace it with something else.
Okay.
But they can do that through the amendment process. Before everyone votes, I just want to make sure everyone understands that is procedurally possible.
Okay. Thank you, Jeff, for working through this one with us.
That's what we do.
So we're ready for a roll vote. Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Arisman, I, Golding,
Aye.
Mazzarelli,
Aye.
Landowski,
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
All right, that carries unanimously. So it looks like we don't have the Stephen Cohen trustee at 6 and 11 Hollywell, East Hollowell. Jeff,
No.
do you want direction on that one?
Yes, please. And just to remind everyone, that is the repair of the singular groin on that lot. We didn't close the other one. On
It's a simple one.
The more
more
simple,
simple.
exactly. Does anybody have any thoughts?
No, he puts the standard conditions in there.
Yeah, I think standard conditions, and I mean, based on what was presented, this does seem like a repair to me, and not a full replacement. All right.
Okay.
So Jeff, if you think that's enough direction,
I think so.
Ian?
Yes, so I think, could we phrase it as such? That it's we find it a repair and not a replacement? I think that's, a precedent.
Oh, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
It'll be
Yeah, I mean,
abundantly
it
clear.
really is, we have to dot every I and cross every T these days, you know what I mean?
Yes. All right, so this will move us on to 4 Charles Street.
All right, so I did have one change from the meeting. I forgot to include. David had requested a waiver to the 2-foot separation from groundwater. In this case, for the pilings that are going underneath the elevated structure. Other than that, I didn't really have any conditions. It seemed pretty straightforward with just a little infill in that. And I only granted the waiver, or I typed in the waiver that it just is pretty straightforward, where it has the section for vegetated wetlands. Then I just put the commission finds that given the current historic site conditions, that a pile foundation will not have an adverse impact to the resource area, that there are no reasonable alternatives to the project as proposed. Therefore, the commission grants a waiver under section 393 F3A for the project as proposed. In kind of a cheeky thing, they technically qualified for the waiver because it was on the other side of the way, which is in an area outside of their control. But as it was a waiver to groundwater, I thought that seemed kind of ridiculous because the road doesn't care where groundwater is. So I thought adverse impact and a reasonable alternative was a better fit in this case.
So Jeff, is it possible to share that draft? Because what I have for 4 Charles is different.
Yeah, sorry, I added that waiver during the discussion at the meeting.
Okay, thank you. And then my other question, the applicant listed in our agenda is different than the applicant on this. So I'm assuming that the trustee is the correct one.
Yes, the one that Ashford Advisors that made it onto the agenda, when you look at the application, it's the care of on the mailing address. And the actual Elliot, I won't even try, Gummer is the trustee, is the listed applicant name. So.
Perfect. Thank you, Jeff, and thank you for sharing that.
No problem.
so does anybody have any thoughts, comments, amendments? And if not, Jeff, should we call this one as amended since it's different than what was sent out?
Yes, please.
Would somebody like to make a motion to approve as amended? Ian, are you making that motion?
I am.
I'll second.
Mark got you on the second, Linda. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Arisman, I, Golding,
Aye.
Mizzarelli,
Aye.
Klandowski,
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
Great, that carries unanimously. And that moves us on to Hitherview Associates LLC at 26 Tennessee Ave. So Jeff, do they need a waiver for this one because they're adding fill in the flood zone?
Yeah, this is what I wanted to discuss because this situation is going to come up more and more in Nantucket. I didn't put one in just off the jump because I wanted to discuss it, and I don't like to put waivers that haven't been necessarily requested without talking to you guys first. Technically, they are adding fill and decreasing the lot's ability to absorb and contain floodwaters. I think it's more of the contain in this case. But I also understand that the purpose is to maintain separation to groundwater for the required septic system. So the situation comes up from time to time, mostly in Nantucket, where you have these spots where septic systems can't meet that requirement for groundwater and they have to come up and they overlap. And it's the issue that you run into is, without really boring people to death, you're not eligible for a tight tank because you can meet the Title V requirements. And if you can meet Title V requirements through the Board of Health, you're not eligible for something like a tight tank. So you get these people with septic system repair and upgrades in situations that they're in a little bit of a catch-22, where you either are creating a small mound in this case, or you got to get something crazy to work because you meet Title V, because Title V doesn't contemplate flood zones in Title V for this kind of activity. And this is what happens. So if you guys want to talk about it a little bit, that's great. I'm happy to add a waiver. I'm happy to put a finding in, whatever you guys think is most appropriate, but that's kind of the situation that some of these folks are in.
Mark?
Well, I had a brainstorm as you were talking, halfway through your talk, Jeff, and that was ask them to put in a tight tank. But now I realize that they can't. So I don't know where we can go except to approve it. I mean, we can't make a lot unbuildable, obviously. So it's going to be approved, I guess.
I think this is the push to sewer Nantucket that never happened.
Oh, careful. Careful.
Yep.
Another lifetime.
Ian?
Yes, so I think that's the most subtle pun of the week, catch 22 as in catch basin, which is what ultimately we're discussing here.
Oh,
And
stop it.
well, sorry. And, would it be possible to engineer some form of catch basin that actually would have an impact as part of the condition, or is that just too much off the cuff, so to speak?
I think the problem, and I know Mark said it during his presentation, and it's a point that's not lost, is the majority of the site is so low that if you wanted to try to essentially make up that volume on the site somewhere, you'd be running into groundwater and situations where you're getting saturation and things going up. So I'm not sure that you would get the effect you were looking for, because you would essentially be creating areas of saturated soil or water
Right.
to make that work. Because it's, I mean, they're mounting it because they're too close. So
So is there a
Kind of
sponge-like
trick.
material that you could, cover it with? All right, I guess, it's time for it's time for me to keep my mouth shut.
Seth, I saw your hand pop up.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Respectfully, I think some of these questions probably had to be asked to the applicant during the public hearing. But we might have missed the chance, but I do think we need to apply a waiver here. Because, we have really two performance standards that aren't being met. The ability of the land to absorb and contain floodwaters. And then also number two, it says all septic tanks and leach facilities shall be located outside the 100-year floodplain. They're not really meeting either of those, so I think we need to apply the waiver. The one I feel most comfortable with is the no adverse impacts, no reasonable alternatives.
I'm in there with you on that one.
Thank you, Seth. I do think, and I appreciate the discussion of a catch basin. I do worry about the neighboring property just because of the position of the septic to the property line. But I also understand there's no reasonable alternative here.
Okay.
Jeff, I don't know if you want to maybe share your screen when you're done with this one, just so everybody can have a look.
All right, one last question. Sorry, as I'm typing. So not that I like to throw a monkey wrench in or disagree with commissioner opinions. I'm going to, just for the sake of discussion, a little bit. So typically for septic system upgrades, I personally prefer, when we're going from something like this, where we're going from a leach pit to an IA system, to use the net benefit waiver over the adverse impact waiver, because I think inherently all septic systems and leach fields have an adverse impact because they're leaching nutrients. And I think improving the nutrient flow out of the system from the leach pit to the IA system is providing a long-term improvement, even though it's still providing an impact. that's my reasoning to it. I'm happy to go with Seth's suggestion, but I know that's how we've looked at it a little bit in the past. I just get nervous about saying that a septic system is not having an impact because they do.
I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah, clearly, your logic, Jeff, is solid on that, so.
Yeah.
No pun intended in terms of solid waste, excuse me.
Boy, we've been at it for a while tonight. Thank you for that suggestion and your clarity, Jeff.
Yeah, works for me.
Ian's in rare form.
Ah, dear.
Almost there, guys. Sorry about that. You know, my biggest problem with these right now is I used to be able to do these a lot faster. But since we've codified the regulations, all the numbers have changed. And I used to be able to tell you that like waivers were section 1.03, F3, and then whatever the waivers were. And now it's section 390-3. And I just have not memorized all of them as of yet. So it takes me a little bit longer.
Well, that is completely understandable, Jeff.
I'll put it on. All right, so same conditions as before. And then we added the waivers are required to the section that the work shall not reduce the ability of the land to absorb and contain floodwaters or to buffer inland areas from flooding and wave damage. And to section 390.15b2, that project shall not cause groundwater, surface water, or saltwater pollution triggered by coastal storm flowage. All septic tanks and leach facilities shall be located outside the 100-year floodplain. And then I just added the commission finds that given the historic site conditions, that upgrading the septic system to an IA septic system will provide a long-term net benefit to the resource area. Therefore, the commission grants a waiver under section 393 F3C for the project as proposed.
Thank you, Jeff. If anybody sees anything else, any questions, comments, now's the time. And if not, does somebody want to make a motion to approve as amended?
Make that motion, Madam Chair.
So I think Mike got everybody with the motion.
Great.
And I'll give you the second, Linda.
Cool.
So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Arisman, I, Golding,
Aye.
Mizzarelli,
Aye.
Plandowski,
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
All right, that carries unanimously. And that moves us on to 32 Holbert Trust at 32 Holbert Avenue.
This was Art's project that had the privet hedge around with the native planting brochure. I think that's the quickest reminder on what this project was. But again, it seemed pretty straightforward. I think actually lowering the grade keep it from, they're not adding any fill, so they're not altering that in a negative way. So I think that's helpful.
Thank you, Jeff. Any questions, comments, amendments from commissioners? And if not, would somebody like to make a motion to approve as drafted?
So moved.
Linda, I'll give you the motion and Ian, I'll give you the second. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Arisman, I, Golding,
Aye.
Mizzarelli,
Aye.
Plandowski,
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
All right, that carries unanimously. We are done with the orders. All right. So
Yay.
yay, I know that was a long list. That moves us on to other business. We have approval of minutes from August 25th. Thank you, Terry, as always, for the minutes. Did anybody see anything that they feel like needs to be amended? And if not, would somebody like to make a motion to approve?
Move to approve as drafted.
All right, motion made by Ian, seconded by Mark. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Arisman, I, Golding,
Aye.
Mizzarelli,
If I'm allowed, because that's the meeting I missed, right?
Could abstain.
yeah, I would maybe abstain is normally the way we do it.
Abstain. Thank you.
Landowski,
Aye.
Williams.
I'm going to abstain only because I missed the last half.
Okay, perfect. So that carries with Commissioners Mizzarelli and Williams abstaining. Then we have on the agenda our supplemental letter from Pocomo Realty Trust. I know we're still waiting for town council on that one.
Yeah, so we're gonna just carry that forward to the next meeting.
Okay. Discussion of regulatory update. I know we still need to set a date for that.
Yes. I know we had all been kind of holding for, we'd all been kind of holding for this concept matter to get somewhere. We had preliminary scheduled the annual report review for them for after the 18th. We're expecting that report back from Mr. Berman that we were shooting, I think, for towards the end of the month. So I think based upon our discussion, we're gonna have in a little bit, we'll see where we're at. But if people are interested in those dates that we sent around for October, the first one that's available, I was gonna suggest maybe just scheduling and posting the public meeting for the regulatory discussion for that night.
Did you send those dates out again for October? Because my October is beginning to take more shape now.
Yes, I will send those back around. And we'll just confirm that by email, but no one has said they have any objections to that date, so it hopefully will.
What was that date?
That was a supplemental meeting, right? We're not going to try to pile.
Yes.
Thank you.
I will,
October 13th, we're talking about.
yes.
I will no longer be available that day, but I'll respond via email.
Yeah, we're not having the formal public hearing that day. It's just to kind of get it going again, so. We can definitely sort that out.
Okay, because I'm not here twice in October. We're just sort of figuring that out now.
Okay. Well, I think the other piece of this, although it's upsetting to not have 100% attendance, just if we can meet and get the ball rolling.
Rolling, yeah.
Yeah. That it's
I'm here on the 13th. It's just that later in the month, I'm not here and I'm not here the first week. Okay. So I'll be on Zoom from New Hampshire on that first meeting in October.
Okay.
Yeah, and we had
I did it
tentatively
last year,
booked,
same thing.
we had tentatively booked September 29th for the SPPF 2021 annual report. We should be
Okay.
getting Mr. Berman's thing back for then. And then
All right,
October
that's fine.
13th was the next available date, and we can be in the community room or we can do it via Zoom if that's more people's liking to.
So is there,
Trailer.
Sorry,
What's that,
what?
Mark?
is there a meeting on the 29th? Is that, wait,
That's Sconset Bluff is penciled in there.
Okay.
So maybe, Jeff, we can send out those dates again, just to make sure that they're fresh in everybody's mind. Because I think we're maybe losing track.
All right.
Yes, we
They
are
are
on track.
on the way electronically again right now.
All right. Thank you so much, Jeff.
No problem.
So
So
we
we'll
will,
pencil it in.
yes, we will reply to Jeff individually on dates you can or cannot do, and then we'll go from there. So next on the agenda is enforcement actions, potential enforcement actions.
Yes, so really quickly, I only got one this time. I just share my screen. That's not the email I'm looking for. For those who don't know or haven't been following along, this is a lot that we've had some issues with over time. We got a report and was able to go out and do a inspection magically here.
What's
So
the
let
address
me-
again, Jeff?
2 Brock's Court,
Oh, know it well.
don't we all?
Beautiful backyard at one point.
Well,
So the backyard's a wetland. That's
Yes,
the
it is.
issue.
so sorry
Incredibly
for
wet.
the I apologize for the picture being a little crooked here, but
Oh, isn't that interesting?
so there's a shiny new shed. For those who know, this is the end of the driveway. The privet
Yep.
hedge here is abutting the still completely vegetated wetland, the untouched stuff. So there's a new shed that's there that's without benefit of permit. And then again, I wish I could rotate this really quickly here, but
I don't believe they have an HDC permit, Jeff.
I would be surprised if they had any permits, Linda.
Yeah, they
And
didn't
then for
approve
those
that.
who can't see in front of the car here, on the car. Oh, bother. This was the restored wetland area where they had planted like 15 trees and
Yeah.
some shrubs in there. And as you can see by the brown glory that's there, there's nothing. It got totally cleaned out. There's not a tree, there's not a shrub. All of the work that we did to permit that going back in has been gone. So we're
What is
recommending. What's that, Linda?
Happening over there? Jeez.
They're going rogue.
The
Well, that's
same
just
problems.
crazy.
The same problems that we've had there for the last like seemingly 5 to 7 years. They just do things without asking and hope they'll get away with it. So
Well, it's a little public over there.
yeah, and the neighbors are still all the same. So we got lots of reports as soon as this stuff kind of went down. So we're recommending issuing the enforcement action for the unpermitted work. And to include the cease and desist and just to bring them in front of the commission, and then we'll take appropriate action, probably including something punitive this time, just to hopefully send the message home.
Have you brought this to the attention of the building department and the HDC that I don't believe they have a permit for either?
Yes, I will once we issue our enforcement too. So.
Okay.
All right, would anybody like to
I
make a
have to-
motion?
I have to recuse myself as
Yeah, he's a neighbor.
they're my neighbors.
Yeah.
And in fact, I can't see the shed from my property. So what can I say?
I'll make that motion.
All right, so motion made by Linda, seconded by Seth. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Arisman, I, Mizarelli,
Aye.
Landowski,
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
All right, that carries with Commissioner Golding recused. Thank you, Jeff, for bringing that to the commission's attention.
Oh, you're welcome. Of all of my favorite ones to bring back, this may be at the bottom of my list.
Right? That was such a fun string of meetings we had with that property. All right, so that moves us on to reports. We have crack,
Nothing to report.
CPC,
Nothing to report.
NP and EDC.
No meeting, nothing to report.
Perfect. Commissioners' comments. Linda?
Yes.
A great meeting, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Linda. Ian?
Yes, so there are two things, both on Baxter Road, 71 Baxter Road. Nothing's happened about the intrusion into public way by the current owners who took over from John Merson. And also I sent Jeff pictures of what looked remarkably like, excuse me, topsoil in front of 79 Baxter Road that's being used to fill the geotubes. So I'd just like to bring that to my fellow commissioners' attention. Excuse me.
Thank you, Ian. Jeff, I see your hand up.
Yeah, so we're gonna have Morgan on site for those tomorrow to take a look at all of that and document that. The 79 ones are the cover, and it looks like they have some interesting core materials there too that don't look like the traditional bags there. So she'll be down there tomorrow to get an on the beach look at it.
Great, thank you. And I'm planning to get in touch with Roads and Rights of Way, but anyway, so I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
I'll connect with you offline about that one too, because there's outside of our jurisdiction, there's some other things afoot there. So I'll connect with you tomorrow.
Thanks, Jeff.
Any other commissioners' comments? It's like no. Administrator staff reports.
No, Ben has already logged into executive session, so I was gonna say, if you guys want to do that really quickly, we can hopefully knock that out pretty quickly.
Okay. So the next item on the agenda is executive session for us for two purposes that are outlined in our agenda. I'll read them. So to just discuss strategy with respect to litigation with regard to the Sconset Beach Preservation Fund geotextile tube project removal order, where an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the litigation position of the commission. And second, to discuss strategy related to the proposed memorandum of understanding between the town of Nantucket Select Board and SBPF with respect to litigation with SBPF geotextile tube project removal order, where an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the litigation position of the Conservation Commission. So we need to make a motion to go into executive session for the purposes outlined in the agenda and to adjourn from executive session, not to come back into open meeting.
So move, Madam Chairman.
It's a motion made by Linda. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Seth. By roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Arisman, I, Golding,
Aye.
Mazzarelli,
Aye.
Landowski,
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
Okay, so there is a link that Jeff emailed out this afternoon. We'll see you guys in executive session.
All right, just give me a second to start. I'll be right there.
Grab a charger, so I'm gonna be like 2 minutes before I'm in. But so bear with me. All right, let's go grab a charger.